Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my Blacadian universe. So, I was thinking and chatting with my girlfriends about why it is that it is always so hard for people to give credit to Black people. Have you ever noticed this? Have you noticed this? Because I certainly have. Why it's so stuck in people's throats to acknowledge Black excellence. It's not the case for any other, group of people. People are so excited to say that, for example, Indian people brought yoga, created yoga, although there are some cases to suggest that the hieroglyphs in Africa are actually, yoga poses, and just acknowledging that, another group of people may have also understood the benefits of moving your body. I don't feel like it would be as hotly contested if that group of people were any other community except for Black people, because the narrative, the direction, the push is always so strong to deny any type of invention, creativity, innovation from our people. So let's talk about it. So this is how the conversation did come about. I was saying like, oh yeah, I just was like reading this thing about how, it's very widely contested or not believed that some of the hieroglyphics in Africa, like, were poses that are, sort of similar to yoga poses. And then, the conversation, we sort of had this like laugh, how we are, my girlfriends and I, just we don't take anything too seriously, even though, we're having serious, historic conversations about colonization. And they were saying like, like they're never going to give Black people credit for anything, even if it's true. And, I was like, yeah, why do you think that is? Like, why is that? And, we went deep, guys, we went deep, and I immediately thought I would bring it to you all, um, that it's not an accident. It's not an accident that we are not seen as leaders or as people to be emulated and admired, because the the belief is that, Africa, our origins, all people's origins, but in the Western world, where they believe only Black people came from, they believe that it's a very poor, impoverished, desolate place, and nothing good could have come there, even though it's, a very rich place, not only of natural resources, but also of people and of culture. And they truly wanted to believe that, Black people existed in terrible conditions before, Westerners came in and basically brought us to civilization as enslaved people. And so that narrative is so pushed and so strong that people will not believe that there were, you know, farmers there before enslavement, that there were scientists there, that there were artists there, that there were people just existing as they did in other parts of the world, that we were basically just waiting to be collected to come to the Western world, which sounds ridiculous, but people do believe that. And I'll tell you why. Because they're being told to believe that, because it's easier to believe that you are giving someone a benefit, that your people, your ancestry, your history isn't filled with the most disgusting evils ever known to humanity, if you believe that there was a benefit. Have you been noticing this rhetoric recently about how, oh, slavery wasn't that bad, and it's because this lie that's been told, that there was nothing happening beforehand, before white people came in, again centering the white experience, that white people came in and basically rescued Black people, that we would have never done anything without their intervention. And again, it's just this, that's just, I mean, if that doesn't say entitlement and privilege, and that retelling of a history in which you as the villain are being painted as, some sort of savior, I don't know what is. And so we came to the conclusion that it's not by accident. Colonization is so deep, so thorough in eliminating and collecting a culture, that it also, in the legacy of colonization, is that it continues on with the ideas, the stealing of ideas, the fact that ideas couldn't exist without white influence. And that's a powerful thing. So I'll tell you one of my, thoughts around this is just around, I think I've told this story before, around, the things that carried over from our people that were brought here, that were enslaved. And, sort of, I think this, chef was going back on a pilgrimage to Africa, and he was talking about how he noticed that some of the things that he, from his, grandmother, were also replicated in Africa. And he was saying that, they kept little clay pots of herbs outside the door, just like his grandmother did. And, he was seeing that and just was overwhelmed by that connection, that, that history was continued and connected. And so, all of that to say, that is agriculture, that is farming. The fact that, one of the inventions that are given, that is credited to Black people, is like the almanac, the farmer's almanac, and sort of watching those changes in those seasons, but you'll never hear it. There's so many other cultures that are celebrated for, noticing the changes in the land. I'm thinking of like the Japanese people, how they're sort of credited with that, but you really do have to dive deep to appreciate that it was a Black person who invented the farmer's almanac. And it's because, we're taught that farmers are, in the Western world, like white people. And so, and even to this day, that I honestly think that it's the people that are working the fields are rarely white. But that's a conversation for another day. But I mean, let me just run back to that quick little tangent. We have this annoying habit in Canada of painting our farmers as white, although the laborers, of course, the people that own the farms are white. That hasn't changed from, it's like modern day slavery. But I refuse, by the way, to buy this meat at the grocery store. They put the pictures of the owners, of the farmers, of who they want me to believe is like growing these vegetables, this meat. They put it on their packaging. And I was like, that's a lie. Like, I'm not buying into that lie. I know that the people that worked this, picked these fruit, vegetables, whatever, were not, the family on this picture. So I'm like, please don't sell me that picture. Anyways, that's just, I digress. But the point is that it's not an accident. It's not an accident that we are shown who is innovative, who creates things, and it's never going to be attached to a black face. Okay. So, our conversation went all across this landscape of the inventions of skincare. Black people have rituals of how we care for our skin. Have you ever heard of the expression black don't crack? But yeah, and it's because, obviously we have melanin and all that great stuff, but people just want to make it seem like we don't have rituals of, oiling our skin and our hair, all of these beautiful beauty care rituals. But because you're not allowed to see Black people as beautiful, you are not wanting to emulate this. You will never, ever, ever want to follow a Black woman's skincare routine, but you will go through this whole, Korean skincare because you're saying, oh, that's great because, let's be honest, colorism. But you'll never want to say, oh my gosh, like, why does this Black woman look like she's glowing and she's like 85 years old? No one's ever going to talk about that. And I was like, pure, pure, pure colorism. Like, we are not the beauty standard. We are being told that we are at the bottom of the beauty standard. So of course no one's going to want to know our skincare routine. And that's just ridiculous. And then of course we all went into our laughing of like, have you seen my friggin' skin? Like, perfect. Like, have you seen me in the sun? Just glowing, okay? People should be lining up to get our secrets, but they won't, because it's not an accident. It's not an accident that you are told that everything Black is bad, because it makes it easier for you to say that it was okay that the worst crimes in humanity were, committed against these peoples, because it doesn't matter. They're not human. That's another way of dehumanizing us, is making sure that you know that we didn't have culture. We didn't have happiness. We didn't have anything. We didn't have medicine. We didn't have art. We didn't have a community before we were stolen and enslaved. It's a much easier story to tell than we took mothers, fathers, artists, doctors, healers. It's a much easier, saying we just took these, non-people from a land than saying we took people and we committed crimes against humanity against them. So don't look to them for anything. Don't ever look to them for anything other than work, because that's their only value, is to serve white people. And so this is why people have a hard time giving credit to Black people for anything, no matter what we invent, no matter what we create, even now in front of your own eyes. When we talk about things like the x-rays that, Black people created, air conditioning, like cell phones, all these, like I think it was like a car cell phone. I can't remember, but I think it's something like that. And just all these things that do you know, and it makes me think, like, the fact that grudgingly people have to give credit to Black people for these things because, we lived in a time where at that time, it couldn't be stolen. You think about like, the distilling process for liquor, um, for alcohol, like that was, oh my gosh, what is it? Is it Jack Daniels? They actually did give credit to the enslaved man who created it. And so you're sort of like, imagine all the inventions that happened that someone didn't have the human decency to accredit to a Black person, and it was stolen. Um, it's one of those things where you're like, imagine it's it's terrible. So I just, it's not an accident. It's not an accident that um, it's a process of colonization to just discredit and take away the humanity of Black people. And it's still continuing. It's still continuing that, the people that don't want to admit that, they come from Africa. That disassociation with wanting anything tied to Blackness, to Black people, is deep. And it even comes from our thoughts. When we talk about how you don't want to give credit, you can appropriate our culture, but don't want to give us credit. And it's because you can study us and watch us and want to be benefiting from us, but you'll never give us credit because you were taught that you don't have to. You can take our labor, you can take our ideas, and utilize them for your own benefit, because that is the only role you are shown and expected to believe that Black people serve in your life. And it is simply not true. As I said, with my girlfriends last night, and I'll say it again to you, is eyes on your own paper. Okay, if you can't give me credit for you taking my ideas, keep your eyes elsewhere. Stop watching us. Leave us alone. If that's what you truly, truly want, if you think nothing good can ever come from a Black person, then please stop watching our TikTok videos. Like, that's just the most basic one. But I mean, stop copying our dances and then trying to put some blonde hair on it and calling it your own. Stop watching our inventions. Stop. Just, if that's truly what you think is going to happen, and we say it all the time, you know, it, we're okay. We're okay on without being, um, in our business. It's always like that, just always eyes on us, but eyes on your own paper. If you can't give me credit, then do not look here for ideas. Go and be great without theft, without colonization. Be great without all those things. If that's truly what you think is the truth. But it's not the truth. But it's not the truth. I'm saying the quiet part out loud. It's not the truth. And I'll end by this, because I know that, I'm a Black person and I'm talking about Black issues here on this podcast. And I am a supporter of all oppressed communities. And, I know that a lot of other communities have had their cultures stolen. And even the fact, as a Black person, that I take the time to acknowledge it, just, again, is something that other communities will not do for us. So when I say I'm talking specifically about Black ideas, that's what I mean. So I know I just want to talk about Black people, for an instance, because we always get left out of this conversation of, we are hanging on to the past. The past is still influencing us today, and we need to acknowledge that. And everybody, all voices, need to acknowledge that that is happening to Black people before we can move on. It's always, oh, it happened so long ago. It's still happening. It's still happening right now. And I will end by just sharing that, you know, I really love the phrase about decolonizing our minds. And so this is what I mean. I think that really impacts me when I say these things, when I want every thought and conversation and action that we have to be looked through the lens of colonization. So it seems like such a small thing. When I say like our TikTok dances, not to steal someone's intellectual property. Actually, that's a big one. But, just like it sounds silly. But when I say, why is it so hard for people to say, I was inspired by watching these Black people, do something cool, or I saw this on a Black woman and it was just so beautiful. When I say that that's a deeper issue because of colonization, that's what that statement means. Do not discount it as something minor, but you are being taught every single day in many different ways to dehumanize Black people and center whiteness. And you need to move away from that and question all of those decisions constantly. It's a constant work that needs to be done to decolonize our minds and our surroundings. And it starts with the little things. So I will stop there. Thank you so much for listening. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time.